when the college football playoff rankings went out and the matchups went out, it was Alabama in Bloomington taking on Indiana. And I said I think that number would be 9.5. Vegas has come back, and they said they put an early number on that line, and they said Alabama 7.5 on the road at Indiana. So a little bit lower than I thought. But I think if they played in South Carolina, I think right there with Oregon, they'd be a 4.5, anywhere from 4.5 to 6.
So
the same with Texas.
Any of your top teams, Oregon, Ohio State, Texas.
Nobody more than a touchdown.
Penn State, Tennessee, Notre Dame, Miami, Alabama. Just through the rankings there, they'd all be about 4.5, 5,
4.5 to 6, yeah.
And not to mention the fact if it's a night game at Williams-Brice, just ask Texas A&M about that. That's a difficult place to play.
Yeah, man, I give Shane Beamer, he is going to get unless he got an extension last year, which I don't think he did, because wasn't it 2 years ago his first year was the better year?
Yeah, I think he'll get one this year.
He should.
Our show being brought to you by our friends at Hydra Live, the wonderful folks at Hydra Live. They're getting you ready for a weekend, or maybe they can help you coming off a big weekend.
Yeah, look, I go on the front end. If you've got a big weekend coming up, whether you're heading to New Orleans, you're flying to New York for the weekend, whatever it is, get hydrated properly. Our friends at Hydra Life Therapy, they can do it. IV therapy, B12 injections, cryotherapy, compression therapy, now weight loss therapy, all under one roof. 2 locations in Birmingham, Homewood, Highway 119 in Greystone, also a Tuscaloosa location. When you're in one of those locations, mention the next round. You're going to get 20% off all the great services. Ask about memberships as well. For more information and to book an appointment online, hydralifetherapy.com.
All right, so when we come back, we will go to Todd Ferman, who joins us from Las Vegas. He'll be with us, and I think Keith tells you, Brownie, he's 7-1 and is off the radar games.
That may be correct. I was trying to remember who was it last week.
Yeah. It was West Virginia. Because he was going to go North Texas. I saved him.
You did. You saved him a loss. Lance did North Texas. He said, since Lance brought that one up, I'll change. You're right. He did go West Virginia, who won outright going away.
Yeah, so that's very interesting. We'll get to Ferman from Vegas. Coming up on the other side, don't forget the Tyson-Jake Paul fight is tonight. It starts streaming at in the 7 to 8 o'clock window there on Netflix, and the fight LT projecting shortly after 9 o'clock for that. Big win last night for the Philadelphia Eagles over Washington. Another big week ahead in the NFL on Sunday and Monday. You can get your plays at lanceslock.com. All brought to you from the Birmingham Racecourse Casino Studio. This is The Next Round.
Take the next round anywhere you go with official Next Round gear. Buy yours today at nextround.store.
There's only one Champy's world famous fried chicken. Poor boy's tenders, full fried chicken plates, and a little bit of the Mississippi Delta with chicken on a stick and hot tamales. On your way to or from the big game on Highway 119 in Alabaster, stop by Champy's Chicken.
This hour of The Next Round is presented by the Birmingham Racecourse Casino, now featuring 7 days of giveaways with your chance to win a share of up to $125,000. The more you visit the Birmingham Racecourse Casino, the more chances you have to win.
Storm season is here. Make sure you have a plan of action in place right now. Greg from Pell City and Storm Restoration Roofing should be your first call when storms hit. Insurance companies love working with Storm Restoration Roofing because of Greg Nelson's name and reputation in the industry. When storms hit, call Greg Nelson. He's local, 205-542-3531. He's the home of the free no-cost roof inspection. Greg from Pell City on Facebook, 205-542-3531. It's Storm Restoration Roofing.
Follow Next Round Live on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. The social media team at Next Round Live is dedicated to giving you daily news conferences and practice video from UAB, Alabama, Auburn, and around college football. Follow and compare to the sites you used to visit. You'll also get the latest highlights and news from the Next Round Daily Show. Turn on the notifications so you don't miss a thing. Next Round Live on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. See more at nextroundlive.com.
By now, you guys know how I feel about my fashion. However, did you know that I care about your fashion choices? Cargo shorts are out, flip-flops are only appropriate on the boat, and please throw away that stained t-shirt from college. You may be thinking, EG, that's all I own. What do I do? Here's what you do. Go to nextround.store and fill your cart with a wardrobe that is approved by me. Stock up on logo t-shirts, hoodies for football season, and hats for every day of the week. Trust me on this one and head over to nextround.store to get stocked up for this season.
Take the next round anywhere you go with official Next Round gear. Buy yours today at nextround.store.
Let's do it again, a Monday morning live. Tom Luginbill, ESPN, always joins me on this Monday morning. I was just sending out on social media what a great sign it is to see that face and that preview monitor every Monday, because I know I'm about to get smarter when it comes to college football. Lugs, good morning. Welcome into, sadly, the Monday before week 13 of the college football season. It flies by, but we've been on a magical ride, haven't we?
Oh, it's been unbelievable, man. I feel like I'm a broken record each and every week, Jim. The margin of error is razor thin. Nobody's safe. You better bring your A game. And now, like, roster management, when you get your bye, are you healthy? Are you peaking at the right time? And then you add all of that into the blender of playoff scenarios, clinching scenarios, data points, measurements, metrics. It doesn't get any better than this. This is what we all wanted, right?
That's right. That's right. This is what we wanted. I don't know if I exactly wanted it this way. We'll talk more about that as we move throughout, but this is what we wanted. We'll go hashtag blessed, hashtag grind as we get ready to go for the next hour here on Monday Morning Live with Luganbill from ESPN, the ACC Network, Sirius XM, if you hear him and Barrett on the weekend. We'll talk about everything going on, all brought to you by our friends at MyBookie. MyBookie.ag, promo code next round, gets you in the game, not just for the football season that's winding down on the college ranks, but also the NFL ranks are there as well, and college basketball, which is going on, a lot of craziness. It's our friends at MyBookie, mybookie.ag. The promo code next round gets you that initial deposit. Using that promo code, double your initial deposit right there. mybookie.ag, mybookie.ag. Promo code next round, no space. Put it all in together. All right, before we get going with the bigger games in the country, here locally, Alabama and Auburn took care of some lesser non-SEC opponents, and they did what they were supposed to do. For a rarity, because Alabama has been in the rankings for the most part of the season, let's start with Auburn, because you know recruiting very well. And this was the breakout game, if you will, or the game a lot of people have been waiting on for five-star recruit Cam Coleman. He had 8 catches, 3 touchdowns. In the third quarter, he had an unbelievable highlight reel behind-the-back one-handed grab for a touchdown. And 100 yards receiving. For a five-star high-profile recruit, how important was it for him? Now, follow me here. I've heard no rumblings of him wanting to hit the portal or anything.
Sure.
But when you've got a high-powered receiver like that and you've had the offensive year you had, how important was it for him to have a game like that in front of the home crowd at Jordan-Hare Stadium to sort of stamp his Auburn brand? It was a big game, I think, for him and for him at Auburn.
Well, it was a big game, and I think the focus being on him is a message to him from the coaching staff that, hey, listen, we're gonna get this thing fixed at quarterback. We're gonna become more dynamic, and we want to build the wide receiver room around you. You know, this was a receiver class in the last 20 years in recruiting. I don't know if we've had a trio of receivers between Ryan Williams, Jeremiah Smith, and Cam Coleman that we went back and forth on more times in our different reiterations of rankings because they were all so special in everything that they did, right? I think we settled on Williams, Smith, and Coleman. They were all top 10 players for us overall, regardless of position. And I think, listen, with name, image, and likeness being what it is, with Auburn's ability to compete in that world, they've got to make sure that he knows he's an integral part of the future of the offense. And it starts by doing it on the field, but then it also starts by, surrounding him with people in recruiting that he knows, he respects, and he knows he's going to have good people around him.
Yeah, if I can just paraphrase real quick, that to me, that was a big picture game from Hugh Freeze and the coaching staff. Cam, this is the future. You're looking into the future right now. It's you getting 8 targets, you having a big 3-touchdown game, right?
Yeah, and I think the other thing, too, about it is if you notice, it wasn't all just deep throws. It wasn't just your go and your post. I think what they've got to do to continue to enhance him, move him around a little bit, get him involved in the RPO game of the glance route behind the fake run and toss him the slant, get him involved in the curls and the big digs and stuff, and let him do some stuff after the catch. Because I think that's a little an area that's undervalued by him, because so much of what we've seen when we've seen spectacular plays are the play like we saw in the end zone with the 100 grab, the one-handed grab back that was just spectacular. But he's better after the catch than people think.
Peyton Thorne had a career day, 5 touchdowns. A bummed up shoulder. He played through the pain. Peyton will be on the next round with us coming up Tuesday in the opening hour of that show. But I was more interested in who came in at QB2. And we talk about this on the show the last couple of weeks. Do you think Auburn's quarterback of the future is currently on that Auburn roster? Or is it still yet to be found in the portal or signed in this recruiting class? Because this time they went to Walker White as QB2 in this game. Do you think the future, the guy who will be throwing to Cam Coleman in the future, is on that roster right now, or do you think Hugh Freeze is still shopping and looking?
Well, I think potentially he is, and that's the entire reason you play him now to try to find out more, right? Now, this was a Hugh Freeze and Auburn coaching staff recruit, right? So they actively pursued him, as did many others. You bring him into the program. You're not quite sure what you think of him yet. He hasn't gotten a lot of turns. He's not getting turns with the ones. And, you get to this point of the season and you say, you know what, let's throw him in there and see how he responds. Maybe not so much how he plays, but let's watch his body language, his demeanor. Let's see how he handles things emotionally and how he manages the huddle, manages the game. In a contest like this is the perfect opportunity to do that. I think it's a really smart move. It gives them more information, and I think it leads to them making a better decision on, yes, this guy's not ready yet. Doesn't mean we don't like him, but we better go out and get somebody to compete with him. Or you say, you know what, this guy's got a real shot, and let's see where we go, and then go get another quarterback in this 2025 class.
One more on Auburn here in the opening segment here. This is Monday Morning Live, brought to you by our friends at MyBookie, mybookie.ag, with Tom Luginbill of ESPN. My other question on Auburn is a lot of confidence when you beat ULM 48-14. Not a horrible football team there at Louisiana Monroe. So you got some confidence, and you got the final home game of the year coming up against playoff contender, SEC championship contender, Texas A&M. I personally think, Lugs, if you can sell me on Wisconsin's got a chance on beating Oregon at home, like we had this past weekend, they had a chance to do that. I think you can sell me on Auburn having a chance to disrupt a very special Texas A&M season, because there is no way the Aggies they're not looking ahead to Texas. They've got to go on the road, play at Auburn with that Texas game on the horizon. This is a tough spot for the Aggies, in my opinion.
It absolutely is. But I'll say this, too. What has generally been such a daunting place to play on the Plains hasn't been all that daunting for most people that have gone in there. And so I think, given the environment that Texas A&M has been accustomed to playing in, both at home, they know going in on the road at Auburn what it's going to be about. I think Auburn's good enough on defense to turn this into a real contest. The question is going to be what it's been every single week, Jim. Can you get Jarquez Hunter the football consistently? And then are you careful with the football at the quarterback position? There is no way Auburn, I don't care if they're at home or on the road, if they go out there and they give the ball away 3 times, that's not winning football. And that's been the trend with this team. If they go out and they play clean and they go out and they play pretty sharp, then they should be in a position to turn this into a football game in the fourth quarter.
Texas A&M beat New Mexico State 38-3. They come in with Auburn on the road, and then the home game with Texas on the horizon. Alabama, before we get to the games that really were some of the best of the weekend, but Alabama had Mercer. They seem to play Mercer a lot lately. This is, it is what it is. 52-7. Alabama did what they were supposed to do, 31-7 at halftime. Fairly healthy coming out of that. Milroe with 3 total touchdowns. Ryan Williams with 2 touchdowns. It's that defense. I don't care who you're playing. It's that defense that continues to cook, man. They're percolating right now, man. They're bubbling, and they even got a touchdown from Xavier Brown out of this. I love where Kane Womack's defense. I doubted this guy, man. I didn't like the scheme. I did not like the scheme. But, my goodness, it is starting to work.
Well, I remember, too, like we forget and we gloss over, okay, for those of us, particularly in the state of Alabama, that Kane Womack's done a really good job at South Alabama. But remember, he was on that staff with Tom Allen when they had that phenomenal year at Indiana. That's where the connection is with Kalen DeBoer.
But everybody wins at Indiana. Look what's happening now.
Indiana's just full of good football coaches.
Yeah.
But Listen, I think what they found their method of operation, and it's not to sit back and read and react. It's not to, play in a reactive, type of mentality. It's to be aggressive. It's to disrupt, and it's to pressure. And what that's done is it's created confidence. And the older and more experienced, the back end players like Xavier Brown, he's got the 68-yard fumble recovery this past week. They have found what they are. Took a little while. That's okay. But I remember going back, we had this conversation, and I said to you, it was several weeks ago, I said, Alabama's not the same team on defense when they don't bring 5 or more on virtually every snap. And when they did that, even against Vanderbilt, they caused problems. But they would go back and then they would revert and kind of sit back. I just don't think that's them. I think they found exactly what they are, and it plays really well to what's happening offensively. And confidence goes a long way, man. And right now, if you look at them, and I'm sure we'll get into this discussion about, whether or not it's wise to make an appearance in the conference championship game, especially if you're a team like Alabama, who if you lost that game, you'd have a third loss. But it looks like as long as they take care of business against Oklahoma and Auburn, and Missouri wins at least one, they're in.
Yeah, I like where Alabama's defense is on the road at Oklahoma. Not a gimme game. That helmet is worth points there. That atmosphere will be good. And then a home game to Auburn. And if they do take care of business, they're in that SEC championship game in Atlanta. More on that in a moment. We'll get to all the other big games and a tutorial from Heather Dinich video. We'll get to that up next. So get ready to walk me through this. It's something you and Barrett talked about yesterday on your Sirius XM show. But I want to remind everybody, show also not only brought to you by our friends at mybookie.ag, but also by our friends right there at Gutter Cap Birmingham. Our man Chris Stewart, he's been working for a couple of decades now on making Birmingham's gutters the cleanest, free-flowing gutters in all of America. And right now, you get a free estimate and up to 45% off the retail price when you cap it and you don't snap it with our friends at Gutter Cap of Birmingham. 205-823-2212, 823-2212, or guttercapbirmingham.com. You go in there, they come out and they clean those gutters one last time, and then they cap it. You never have to worry about it again. This housing market's about to explode. So if you're thinking about selling your house, you cap it, you don't snap it, and that adds value to your home. People are going to love it. You can actually upcharge a little bit when you're selling your house at that point. If you got gutter cap, just make that a selling point to your wonderful house there. The new owner would never have to clean the gutters ever at the new home. It's like a paradise. Cap it, don't snap it. 45% off, 823-2212 or guttercapbirmingham.com. Okay, you sent me a video yesterday, and for those that don't know, much like the next round, you and I do no show preps. This chemistry is natural that we get here every day. You never know what I'm going to talk about. But you did send me a text yesterday, and it really helped me. I was in the middle of the first 2 holes of my golf outing. It wasn't going well. I watched this tutorial from Heather Dinich on a legal pad, a yellow legal pad, and all of a sudden I par 5 of the next 6 holes. So thank you, Lugs, for that calming video from Heather Dinich. You sent me the video and you said, hey, we just had a good conversation about this. And I think what my takeaway from the video is that Tennessee is now a bubble team, and no matter how bad the Big 12 champion is, we've got to fit them into the playoffs somehow. What was your takeaway from her tutorial of where we are in the college football playoffs going into the final 2 weekends?
Yeah. Well, I don't want to speak for Heather directly, but she put together just on a legal pad of exactly what the scenario would be to play out that would leave Tennessee out of the college football playoff. And I think the in her mind, she's probably asking herself this question initially. Number one, we saw what the committee did when they lost to Georgia on the road. All right. That was a steep fall. Will they do that again to Tennessee? All right. And it's a legitimate question because both games, Tennessee losses on the road, a Georgia loss is on the road. All right. So how are they going to look at those two teams, and what will they do to Tennessee in comparison to what they did with Georgia? But essentially what you have here is if you had the top 12 teams in terms of where everybody sits right now, and you had BYU there sitting there at 13 and they win the conference championship in the Big 12, they clearly wouldn't be one of the top 4 seeds. All right. But they would be the next highest ranked conference champion, okay, above the American and above, let's just say, well, the ACC would already be in there if Miami wins out. But really what it does is it puts Georgia in over Tennessee because of the head-to-head win, forces BYU in because they're a conference champ, and that's what leaves Tennessee out, even though Tennessee in the ranking would be technically higher than BYU would be.
Yeah, my takeaway was that if Tulane and or Army don't lose again, they win the American, the Mountain West is in. If there is some stumbles down the road here in the final 2 weeks of the Big 12 and the team that's not supposed to win it when they get to the Big 12 championship game wins it, is there a scenario that either the American champion, like an unbeaten Army, is that team in there and the Big 12's left out? That is a scenario, right? The Big 12's not guaranteed to be in there.
Right, and that's something that we've got to explain too, because a lot of people feel like, oh, well, you're a Power 4 conference champion, you're in. That's not true. It's the top 5 highest ranked conference champions. So it's not just the Big 12 that could potentially be in danger. The ACC could potentially be in danger as well for the scenario you just laid out right there, depending on what happens with the Mountain West, what happens with the American Athletic Conference Championship, which is already set between Tulane and Army. So, yeah, just for clarity, it's easy to say, okay, well, it's the Power 4 conference champs and then the top 5, which would be the Mountain West right now, but it's really not. It's the highest ranked conference champ, and that's why the Tulane Army matchup could loom eventful here down the stretch. And this is what makes it great, right? I mean, it seems odd. We've had so much conversation, Jim, about what is the loss threshold that would get you out, and so I've said it was 2, but I've said that just because that's my natural instinct, but we've never gone down this path before. That's the other thing. Nobody really knows what the committee is going to do with a team that has to play in a conference championship game against a ranked opponent, play an extra contest, and they lose. What are they going to do if that team has a 1 loss more than other teams that had the same previous record that didn't play in the conference championship game? And if one of those teams has 3 losses, are they going to keep them out?
Yeah, I'll give you the
nobody
example.
Knows the answer.
I'll give you the example of what they're talking about in the mybookie.ag chat room. But first, Landmine Believer wants you to react to this. Back to your Tennessee scenario, he's like, Tennessee fans cannot grasp the concept that their head-to-head win over Alabama means nothing because all the tied teams cancel each other's out and the head-to-head is out. But also when it comes to to making the playoff field, it does seem like Tennessee's win over Alabama isn't hurting Alabama as much as other losses are hurting Tennessee. It does seem like Alabama's in a better spot than Tennessee is, and Tennessee beat Alabama.
Right, but they have also got a better resume, Alabama does, than Tennessee. If you look at Alabama's resume, they do have 3 ranked wins, including one against, at the time, was the number 2 team in the country, right, in Georgia. Tennessee's got the win versus Alabama. Now, we can have this conversation all day long because you can look at Texas right now and you can say, who's their best win? It starts with a V.
Yeah.
Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
Right? And so, you can do this. And I think what we'll start seeing too, Jim, this week in particular, I know I'm going to be a part of them on some of our studio shows on Wednesday, is everybody's going to start throwing up these blind resumes, right? Overall record, top 25 wins, strength of record, strength of schedule, common opponents, all of these and that. And I think people are going to be surprised when they reveal who's on each side, because it may be different than you think it is. And if Notre Dame's involved in a lot of those blind resumes, there's going to be a lot of people going, well, wait a minute, how is Notre Dame, even with their record, even involved in this thing?
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be fun to reveal those things this week, because now, I think previous to now, the eye test probably has paid more dividends in the decision-making process of the committee. Now we're going to start transferring to more of a metrics-based look at things, because you're going to be forced to.
I hope so.
Everybody's going to cannibalize themselves.
Hey, I hope so, because if you're not factoring in strength of schedule as a big data point, then you're not doing it right. It just wouldn't be fair to what the SEC has to do. And Tyler says the Big Ten and the SEC built this playoff. They're not going to allow their conference champion to be conference champion loser to be kicked out of this thing. So I'll ask you, and this was a talking point we had with Bama fans over the weekend, with Alabama with the inside path to get there if they take care of business against Oklahoma and Auburn. Alabama's going to be in the SEC championship game. Do they want to be in there? I mean, fans are split. Alabama's got 30 SEC championships throughout history. They own that category. Yeah. I think the next one is Georgia with 14 maybe. Tennessee, LSU, 14, 13, 12 right there. Alabama's got 30. But there's something about winning an SEC championship too. I want to go to the game. I want to go to the game, and I want to win the game. But is it smart in the 12-team college football playoff era to go to that game? Could Alabama lose that game and be left out of that game? How do you feel about it?
I think that it's much more dangerous if you enter that game with a 2-loss record, which Alabama would be doing. Okay, if it was a 1-loss record and you go into that, I wouldn't be concerned about that at all. I think it's a fair debate to say, listen, we could sit here, finish 10-2, sit and watch how the rest of the landscape plays out. We know right now the lack of strength in the Big 12 and the ACC as it relates to an extra team in. So, yeah, it may not better us or put us in a better spot to play for an SEC championship game. But I'm with you on this, Jim. A preseason goal of every team is to win their championship, right? And the SEC would be the most prestigious of all college football championships right now in our college football landscape. I think it's important for Alabama. I think it would be important for Kalen DeBoer. I think it would be important to be playing in the game in the first year removed from Nick Saban's leadership, just as a point of proof that you're still on the ascent. But it's going to be interesting to see how that game would play out, right? If you told – I don't think A&M or Texas would be a significant, and I'm not even sure they would be a definitive favorite in that game if it occurred. I think it would be a heck of a football game. I think the committee would pay very close attention to how the game is played. But if you go away from the SEC for a moment and you look, we're talking, because you just said it, you're like, if you don't start looking at strength of schedule, you're gonna miss out on teams. Well, in saying that, you've also got to look at the Big Ten and acknowledge how top-heavy they are.
Yes.
Penn State hasn't played anybody outside of Ohio State. Indiana hasn't played anybody. The league as a whole, top to bottom, at least the Big 12 has a lot of competitive balance of teams that are very similar and that can go in and knock each other off each and every week. I mean, you looked at those matchups, and I know the Oregon-Wisconsin result was a bit head-scratching, but you're on the road. It's late in the season. Everything's happened this fall. But, did anybody think Purdue was going to hang with Penn State? Does anybody think that Northwestern was going to hang with it's a bad conference from the majority of the teams in the league, including the ones that came over from the Pac-12.
I agree. Tom Luginbill, ESPN, is with us here. Sturgill writes in the chat room, I'm not sure losing the championship game is immunity for Alabama. Too many variables at play. That is the thing we keep talking about. You don't know what the committee's going to do. We'll be with you here on Monday Morning Live all the way through the selection process with you to walk you through it. Great stuff from Heather Dinich there on Tennessee when the rankings come out tomorrow night, likely to be the first real bubble team of the era that we're talking about of a 12-team playoff. Who is Coffee? Who is Coffee? You get a link right there at nextround.store. Nextround.store. Go buy our great gear there, but also you can find out how you can get the blend that Scott Forester curated and put together. Beans from all over the world. You can see Brownie smelling it right there with that nose of his. It's almost a scratch and sniff for Brownie right there. Nextround.store. Easy link right there. And get the Next Round Coffee. Who is Coffee? They got a lot of other great blends there as well. Get it delivered like we do in the Dunaway house. All right, big story on recruiting. We'll talk about Alabama recruiting after the break coming up. I want to ask Luganbill about them losing 3 ESPN 300 recruits in the last 5 days. But a couple of games on the field before we take that break, Lugs. Biggest game in the country. I think maybe was Texas holding on and beating Arkansas there because Texas's resume, as you said, isn't great. And then they would have still had Texas A&M on the horizon. They beat Arkansas 20-10. The Horns defense got 6 sacks, but this was not an impressive Texas dominating win for me. And this Texas team, to me, has a lot of flaws. They have a lot of flaws.
I totally agree with you. I think they, like many other teams we've seen, have warts that have come and gone, that rear their ugly head, then get masked for a little while. And I can't get that comment from Steve Sarkisian out of my head from a couple of weeks when he was describing Quinn Ewers, and he said, when he's hot, the best quarterback in the country, but that means you're relying on him to be hot all the time.
That's right.
And if he's not, are you good enough in all of the other areas to win versus a quality opponent when your quarterback plays okay? All right, he plays well, but he's not lights out. That's a bit concerning to me. I think Texas has done a remarkable job masking the deficiencies in the run game when you consider how depleted they have been in terms of talent due to injury. Now, that didn't happen at quarterback. It didn't happen at left tackle. I get all those sorts of things, but that was a part of the offense coming in that everybody was like, whoa, this is an offensive line and a team that with C.J. Baxter can flat run it. It's going to open things up for the offense even more. And because it's been a bit more of a struggle in that regard, I think it's impacted the passing game. But I think Texas is a good football team. I don't think that I look at Texas and I say, I don't want to play that team right now. Now I look at South Carolina and I say that.
Yeah.
I look at South Carolina and I sit there and I go, and that's the other thing in all of this. I understand we got to measure wins and losses. But what is a team right now versus a team in week 3? And you hear me say this every August with you, Jim. Who you play, when you play, and where you play. All right? Well, the when you play them right now for South Carolina is a problem. It's a big problem. The problem is they weren't that team earlier in the season, and it's going to cost them. But I still think the acknowledgement, and I bring this up because I do think this plays well with the committee. When they see a team getting hot and playing well late, it plays well with the committee.
Yeah. I also think that you have to consider that, let's say Vandy. Vandy, I think, was going to look better earlier in the year than they're going to look here at the end. I think they have a bad ending and end up 6-6. But when Alabama and Texas played them, I think Vandy was cooking. I think they were playing pretty good football before they started to get banged up a bit. One more game, and it was the biggest one in the country. Tennessee going to Athens and losing 31-17. Man, this thing was 10-0 Tennessee.
Yeah.
10-0 Tennessee. And then and I was ready to tweet it out, and I kicked myself for not saying it before Herb Street and Fowler said it on the broadcast. And once they said it, I didn't tweet it. But when Carson Beck made that one scramble down 10-0 to pick up the first down, and he lowered his shoulder, delivered a hit, and then they go on and they play great after that. But that one play, I was like, maybe that's the play that wakes up Carson Beck. And it did. From that moment on, Carson Beck looked like old Carson Beck. And Georgia went from down 10-0 and outscored them 31-7 to end that football game. And Georgia is back, and Tennessee's now the bubble team. I like that Georgia team. Can that Georgia team show up every week now?
See, that Georgia team, the way they played, is one of those teams that I look at and go, you ain't beating that team.
That's right.
Unless they screw it up, which we've seen them do, right? Which becomes kind of the great equalizer. But for the first time in several weeks, we saw a quarterback that was decisive. We saw a quarterback that was aggressive, that cut it loose, let it rip, instead of one that had been a bit hesitant, maybe second-guessing himself, realizing that, okay, I'm pressing because we can't run the football, and I'm trying to force things instead of just letting the game come to him. But I also think that there was a moment, and you mentioned that run, lowers his shoulder, momentum shifts into the stadium, all of a sudden, energy's in the stadium. He feeds off of that, and it was almost like his chest perked up, and he's like, okay, here we go.
That's right.
And then he starts making NFL-level throws. The throw he makes down the seam route that he throws in the back middle of the end zone is an NFL weekly throw that he hasn't been doing that this year. He'd done it previously. So I think the confidence for him is back. Now, we'll see if he can carry it over. But that was a different Georgia team. And it was a different Georgia team because they didn't hurt themselves.
That's right. No interceptions, and you're right. He threw that pass, and he wasn't open. The only place that pass could have been caught was where he threw it. It was perfect. Perfect from Carson Beck, and a big win for Georgia, 31-17. I've got to ask you, this could blow up on social media because Tennessee fans are upset about it. But I like the way it was officiated because I think it's some BS to do a late substitution and jog off the field really slowly, like you're not even an athlete, like you're a little drunk frat boy jogging off really slow to try to get a delay of game penalty or to force Kirby to get a timeout. I haven't ever seen it officiated this way, but David Smith's SEC crew, I thought, officiated it correctly. Man, if you're lollygagging off the field, I'm going to go ahead and let them play, and if you don't get your ass off the field, that's 12 men on the field. I thought it was officiated exactly right, and I know Josh Heupel was upset about it.
Well, he was upset about it, but he shouldn't be upset about it because that can be handled one of two ways. To your point, you can let him jog off and say, okay, if you don't expedite the process of getting off the field and completing the act of the substitution, we're going to let him play, and it's going to be 12 men on the field. Or if you're going to do that, we're going to reset the play clock.
Yeah.
All right. So now we're going to give them a fresh 25 seconds. Either one is the right answer to the call.
Yeah. It's absolutely intentional. They're going to give you time to comfortably get off the field. But when you're intentionally late substituting and intentionally basically walking off the field, that's unsportsmanlike to me. Just my opinion.
Yeah, no, listen. But at least the officiating Josh Heupel can take solace in the fact that he didn't have to coach in the Pitt Clemson game.
Good point. Hey, what a game though. What a game though.
It was a fantastic game. I heard Dabo after the game go, man, I just hate to see that somebody lost this game. And I said, I can't believe somebody won it. it was so poorly played, even more poorly officiated. But it ended up being a really good football game to kick off the day of what ended up being a great day of college football.
Yeah, when Pitt took that lead with 1:36 left, I thought it was over with, and then Klubnik with that 50-yard touchdown run.
But it was like the kicker knew. He makes the kick, and he tells everybody, calm down. This thing ain't over yet. Yeah. Calm down. What do you mean it's not over yet? Okay. Clemson had rushed for 8 yards the entire day. 8 yards. And they've got film off a running back, and next thing you know, he rips off a 50-yarder.
Yeah. Now Clemson is 7-1 in the ACC, really good season, but they need help to get into that ACC championship game. We'll see what happens down the stretch there. All right, when we come back, I'll ask Luganbill about Alabama recruiting. I'll ask Luganbill about Julian Lewis decommitting from USC. Could he be coming to the USC? Could he be coming to the SEC? And we'll talk about some more games on the field as we roll on. Second half of Monday Morning Live coming up, brought to you by our friends at MyBookie. MyBookie.ag, promo code next round. Smash those words together, next round, no space. That's your promo code. It's going to get you double your initial deposit by using code next round at mybookie.ag.
Follow Brownie on Twitter and Instagram at ryanbrownlive.
If renting is putting a dent in your bank account, here's your sign from the universe that it's time to buy a new home. And who better to help you through the ins and outs of home buying than our friends at Mortgage Right. With Mortgage Right, you don't have to worry about becoming a short notice mortgage expert because they do all the heavy lifting for you. They're trusted mortgage professionals, and they'll help you choose the right mortgage option and stand by your side every step of the way. Visit mortgageright.com/TNR to buy before renting runs you dry. That's mortgageright.com/TNR. NMLS 2239, Equal Housing Lender.
Hey, this is Matt Roth, the franchisee of Walk On Sports Bistro in Birmingham. With the kickoff of football season, come visit us at one of our 3 locations, Stadium Trace, Greystone, or Trussville. Come enjoy our scratch kitchen menu while watching one of our 80 TVs. Whether you're looking for a pre- or post-game celebration, game day, or date night, we've got you covered. It's all about the win at Walk On Sports Bistro. Walk On, where everybody needs a little playing time.
This hour of The Next Round is presented by the Birmingham Racecourse Casino, now featuring 7 days of giveaways with your chance to win a share of up to $125,000. The more you visit the Birmingham Racecourse Casino, the more chances you have to win.
Just because you've quit going to the gym, it doesn't mean that you have to quit gym altogether. Dunaway, that is. With our Next Round podcasts open 24/7, 365, you can access gym anytime you'd like. While you may have done away with your treadmill routine, our version of Dunaway is standing by ready to get you back to your absolute best. Find all that lovely Jimmy D-led content on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and in the podcast section of nextroundlive.com. This message is sponsored by Jimmy Crypto Inc. and Jimmy Crypto for President.
From the creators of The Next Round comes two new sites, covercrimson.com and thebarnauburn.com. Two team sites with the same excitement and information-driven content that you get every day on The Next Round. Live daily shows, recorded shows, free of charge, plus premium content with insider information starting at just $1. And it's the perfect gift for the Alabama or Auburn fan in your family. Covercrimson.com or thebarnauburn.com. Sign up today.
Happy football season. At The Next Round, we strive to make our loyal listeners feel like they're a part of the action all season long. My name is Grace McWhorter, and I do that by bringing you along for any given Saturday in Auburn or Tuscaloosa. From pregame warm-ups, touchdowns that make you feel a part of the play, and everything in between, our goal is to make you feel like you're inside Bryant Denny or Jordan Hare. Follow along on our social media at Next Round Live on Instagram, X, and Facebook. Also, check out thebarnauburn.com and covercrimson.com while you're at it. Here's to fall Saturdays.
In some places, football is a sport. In Alabama, it's a fine art. New Life Art is proud to announce Daniel A. Moore's upcoming painting, Deuces Wild. This season, Bama is blessed with a pair of very talented deuces. The pair played a huge role on both sides of the ball in the Tide's amazing 41-34 victory over number 2 Georgia. Deuces Wild will portray the unbelievable game-winning 75-yard touchdown catch by deuce number 1, Ryan Williams, late in the fourth quarter. The Dogs' last chance drive was stopped by deuce number 2, Xavier Brown, as he made the game-saving interception in the end zone, which will be celebrated by a small artist's remark in the bottom margin of each print. Go to danielmooreart.com to see the artist's preliminary sketch and take advantage of special pre-publication pricing for Deuces Wild. Also available, The Legend, Daniel Moore's final tribute to Coach Nick Saban. Order now at danielmooreart.com.
From the creators of The Next Round comes two new sites, covercrimson.com and thebarnauburn.com. Two team sites with the same excitement and information-driven content that you get every day on The Next Round. Live daily shows, recorded shows, free of charge, plus premium content with insider information starting at just $1. And it's the perfect gift for the Alabama or Auburn fan in your family. Covercrimson.com or thebarnauburn.com. Sign up today.
Here at The Next Round, we love our guests, especially our 2024 football regulars. Auburn, Alabama fans, we've got your guys. On Mondays at 9:25, we'll be joined by Alabama offensive lineman Tyler Booker, and Tuesdays at 9:25, we chat with Auburn quarterback Peyton Thorne. Join us and rep your team.
Back with you on Monday Morning Live with Tom Luginbill of ESPN, brought to you by our friends at MyBookie. Scott Forester, who's in running the cameras for us, makes a great point here. We have a little competition that goes on, picking upsets every week, Lugs. I don't know who's in the lead right now. Oh, it's me. Big win by New Mexico this past week. Thank you.
Hey, remember how the camera operators can make you look. Never forget that.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to make me not look bad, Luke. So I've got a leg up there. It's not much he can do to me. Penn State. Forrester points out Penn State at Minnesota. That line has moved from 14 yesterday to 11 today, dropping down. Tricky game for the Nittany Lions. Every game's tricky in November. Hey, before we get back to the games and some of the ones that are coming up this weekend, Alabama recruiting with early signing period opening on December the 4th. They lose 4-star running back Anthony Rogers. He's an old Nick Saban commitment that had been rumored a long time about not sticking around. He's had visits to Ohio State and Georgia recently. Auburn and Ole Miss is in the mix. But in a big picture is what I want to ask you here, not about a specific guy, but they've lost 3 ESPN 300 guys in the last 5 days. That includes the big wide receiver Caleb Cunningham from the state of Mississippi, flipping from Bama to Ole Miss, and 4-star outside linebacker Dawson Merritt, who flips from Bama to Nebraska. Alabama's class is still great. Is there any worry here for you, or these are just guys who down the stretch here, seeing how good the class is, maybe finding a better situation for them specifically?
Yeah, I think that this is going to become the norm each and every year right around this time of year. with signing day being moved up to December 4th as opposed to that third week in December, guys are starting to jockey for position. They're starting to see the writing on the wall. The transfer portal is going to start filling up. You're going to start to see where spots are opening or getting a little bit more crowded, and kids are really in tune to that. And they've got a lot of people in their ear. And the time of the year when you take your visit, Caleb Cunningham, for example, he's a Mississippi kid, all right? You go and you take an official visit at Ole Miss on the weekend that they beat Georgia, right? You come off of that, it's a natural high. I mean, the euphoria is unbelievable, right? And that it's palpable, and it can carry some weight down the stretch. Now it's Lane Kiffin's job to hold on to it. Doesn't mean it's over, right? But they benefited from that moment. There's been 11 prospects actually since Kalen DeBoer took this job that have decommitted from Alabama. Now 4 of them were originally committed, as you mentioned, with Anthony Rogers to Nick Saban's staff. I wouldn't press any type of panic button here, but I think what you'll see if you looked across the landscape of the Big Ten, the ACC, the SEC, what have you, you're going to continue to see more and more of this as you start to see other kids commit and what happens in the transfer portal, because it's a numbers game now, Jim. Everybody's looking for that slot, that place. And that's why you can never devalue what a scholarship offer means at the high school level, because of how the portal has impacted how limited the numbers are now.
Yeah, it's almost like everybody's shopping for their first wife right now, not their second wife.
If the music's going to stop, and you better have a chair,
yeah.
Right? I mean, at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to.
Julian Lewis decommits from USC, Colorado, Indiana, Georgia, Auburn. I mean, there's a number of scenarios out here for this guy. What do you think of Julian Lewis, that decommitment, and where do you think he could end up?
Well, I think this is completely a matter of performance on behalf of SC's part. Their on-the-field performance. Forget about the program, who they are, and the folklore of college football. But in the eyes of Julian Lewis, who's been committed to them for almost 2 years now, they're not making progress. They're regressing. And I think a player of his stature, he wants to be in a position in college football where he's going to be a part of a program, at least initially to start off, that has an opportunity to compete for a conference championship, a college football playoff berth, and potentially a national championship. And when you look at Georgia, you look at Indiana, you look at Colorado, there are varying attractive points. Colorado, for example, you've got Pat Shurmur, NFL pedigree coaching the offense. You've got a spread offensive scheme. It's very clear that their roster has become better top to bottom. So there's better players around the quarterback to help him succeed. It's also probably the best destination for him if he's looking to play right away, because he's going to be more talented than what they currently have. Whereas with Indiana, you might be looking at it from a little bit more of a long-term perspective. You'd have to go in and compete with Taven Jackson, who's just a freshman. He's a really good player, beat Washington this year. Your coach just signed a huge extension. You've got an up-and-coming offensive coordinator that's innovative in Tino Sunseri, and they're going to continue to build good players around the quarterback, but you might want to have a little bit more of a long-term view. As with Georgia, I think Georgia would create an opportunity to have an open competition early for Julian Lewis. Maybe not your true traditional spread offense that he has been in, that he's become accustomed to, a little bit more multiple pro style. But I think most importantly is if you're going to look at a program like a Georgia, if we're talking about the 3 that have kind of been narrowed down here, you're going to know going into that program that the program is primed for college football playoff inclusion, an SEC championship, and a national championship inclusion just about every year under Kirby Smart. So how much do you want to win versus how much do you want to play right away versus how much do you want to have the combination of development, win, get better? All of those sorts of things are going to be factors that he's going to have to gather information on and answer.
My favorite game on the field this weekend was Florida beating LSU 27-16. Just such an entertaining game. It's why I love the SEC. I mean, you had a 6-3 team playing at a 4-5 team in just an unbelievable atmosphere. And I just thought DJ Lagway took over this program at this point. There was no, Mertz is out. He's not coming back. Lagway, who's been beaten up, came in, and he just looked so comfortable. And that Gator defense sacked Garrett Nussmeier 7 times, and Billy Napier gets a monumental win for him and for A.D. Scott Strickland.
They're 3-0 with DJ Lagway as a quarterback, 3-1, with DJ Lagway as a quarterback, 3-0 in games he finishes. See, I'm of the belief that Georgia-Florida game goes the other way if he doesn't get hurt.
Yes.
Florida was outplaying Georgia. They were playing with a lead. They were playing with confidence. Listen, if you're Scott Strickland, based off of the meme that you became the week before on the sideline of the Texas contest, this was a big moment for the university, the athletic department, and the football program. And Billy Napier deserves a lot of credit because I don't care what anybody says. And if you're a Florida fan, you got to start looking through some realistic goggles here. All right? The team and the program is making progress. You've been a part of the problem because the constant cloud of negativity that never dissipates, that just looms over the swamp and over the heads of every one of these kids and coaches, how are you supposed to escape from underneath that? And this team, given every opportunity to fold their chair and go home, has not only not done that, they've improved. They got confidence. They're playing at a high level. The defensive front is a totally different animal than it was the first 2 weeks of the season. And I think it's further proof. I don't care what anybody says. If you have a quarterback, you have a chance. If DJ Lagway is not playing against LSU, they do not win the LSU. That's the difference. And so if they can continue to build around him, and it's clear that the kids believe in the vision, I just think that Florida fans, I know it hasn't been ideal, but go back to August and you're sitting there looking at the schedule and you're going, how in the world are they going to navigate this?
That's right.
Well, now they've navigated it, but they've had to do it with 3 quarterbacks. One's a walk-on, a true freshman running back in Jaden Ball, who is going to be a star. He's an absolute monster. A lot of their best players on offense are freshmen. And so, let's give this thing let's step back, have a little perspective if you're a Florida fan.
And that's a big picture here because Napier's not the only guy. I think 3 of the biggest guys on hot seats going into the year have coached their way off of it. Clark Lee at Vandy, I thought he was going to lose his job. Yep. They're going to a bowl game. Napier's 1 win away from going to a bowl game. And then Dave Aranda was going to be the 3rd one. He got Baylor bowl eligible this weekend. Pretty amazing that most of the hot seat guys have coached their way off the hot seat.
They've done a good job, and they deserve a lot of credit. And how Clark Lee's built the Vandy deal has been really fun to watch and deserves a ton of credit. I think, too, we're in an era unlike any other in the history of college athletics, not just college football. But just think of all of the things that every coach in America has to deal with on a day-to-day basis that have nothing to do with X's and O's, recruiting, or winning football games that can completely dismantle your entire program. And remember, not everybody's playing with Alabama's deck of cards or Georgia's deck of cards or the Texas deck of cards. So the job is just more difficult than it's ever been before. And I think if you're coaching above your weight class with what your resources are and you're finding a way to be competitive and win, those are the guys that deserve a lot of credit.
Okay, I'm going to ask a tough question here, and then we'll finish with some rapid-fire reaction to games we saw this weekend. But why is Tennessee the bubble team and not Ole Miss? Tennessee lost to 5-5 Arkansas on the road. Ole Miss lost to 4-6 Kentucky at home. Tennessee beat Alabama. Ole Miss beat Georgia and South Carolina. But I mean, why is it Tennessee that's out and Ole Miss the one that's in right now? Is it just recent bias that we saw Ole Miss with the big win over Georgia more recently than we saw Tennessee's win over Alabama?
I think that, and I think the emergence of South Carolina, if we're going to be real about it. I think the value of South Carolina, how they're being viewed, as I mentioned earlier in our first half hour, how they are playing at this time of year is like fresh in the minds of the committee. And I think it carries weight. It's a completely valid question. But I would say that South Carolina is the X factor in the answer to that question.
Yeah. I was just sitting here wondering, why are we putting more value on the Arkansas loss than the Ole Miss loss at home to Kentucky? Kentucky's not a great football team. Yeah, unless they beat Texas this week. then they're a great football team. Fun game coming up this weekend. Life in the SEC. You got to watch out for those. Got to watch out for those mangy dogs in the SEC. Yeah, here comes Kentucky. Hey, real quickly, we'll rapid fire through some of these games around the country. Oregon survives Wisconsin 16-13. Looked like a tired football team. Oregon did, in my opinion.
I agree. They looked sluggish. I think the venue got them just a little bit. I don't know if they, expected that type of atmosphere, but they do what they somehow do. They find a way to scrap and scrape. Sometimes it's it's a 30-point differential, but when it's not, now I can't explain the fake field goal attempt. That was bizarre. And again, Dan Lanning's been known for taking risks and taking some shots, and I respect that. That one was strange. Fortunately, it didn't jump up and bite him. But I don't chalk this up to anything other than this is college football this fall. Yeah. And if you can get away with a poor performance and win, by all means, good for you.
3 trips east or central time zones in the last 5 games for Oregon. They're now a bye, and then they play 6-5 Washington in their finale. They're locked into the college football playoffs. BYU not locked into the anything anymore. Kansas beat them 17-13. That pooch punt from Jalen Daniels, big play there. Man, that was mishandled and a big break that helps the Jayhawks beat BYU. BYU finally loses.
Yeah, BYU finally goes down, which in turn, if we're going to do a trickle-down effect here, could potentially hurt SMU. That's SMU's only loss by 3 points. And so that doesn't potentially knock SMU into an area they don't want to be in, but it could be a factor down the stretch. I think BYU is still a really good football team, and the reason why they win is they play good defense. They can run the ball. The quarterback has valued the football, and they don't beat themselves. However, when they do beat themselves and they're not playing overly well, they're a bit pedestrian. They have to do all the things right and win on the margins. That's who BYU is.
Yeah, I think BYU loses again this week at Arizona State, who, by the way, Kenny Dillingham
How about that team?
Is a heck of a coach. Top 20. They got to be in the top 25 this week.
It's unbelievable, the job that he's done, what that roster looked like just 2 years ago. And really, it's a very similar turnaround to Colorado. It's the exact same scenario of 2 teams whose rosters were so bad a year ago and then made big inroads in this offseason. And you're right, Arizona State deserves a ton of credit.
Yeah. Virginia gave Notre Dame 5 turnovers. The Irish win. Now they play prime time against Army in the Bronx. And then they play USC in the finale. Can Notre Dame stick the landing here? If they lose one of them, do you think they're out?
I do think they're out because I think Northern Illinois' performance post-win of Notre Dame has been below average at best. That hurts them. The rest of the schedule is not strong. It would help them significantly if SC was having a season. They're not. They are one of those teams I mentioned in our first hour when we start seeing blind resumes compared to SEC, Big 12, ACC teams, Big 10. It's not going to weigh overly well in their favor. So they got to take care of business. But I do believe, as we saw with Navy, now I don't think Army will turn the ball over 6 times, but this is a matter of bigger, faster, stronger.
Yeah.
And that generally wins out.
I want to say Colorado's Travis Hunter locked up the Heisman. He probably did it last week, but 55 receiving, a rushing touchdown, and an interception. Colorado cruises over Utah into the Big 12 championship game. I want this team in the playoffs, man. I want to see them against the best of the best.
Well, I'm gonna tell you this. I think the most unheralded, most deserving Broyles Award-winning coach as the best assistant in America is named Robert Livingston. And if you asked 90% of college football fans who Robert Livingston is, they wouldn't be able to tell you. He's the defensive coordinator at Colorado. And he has done a remarkable job because that team's not just 12-2 anymore. They are able to function on defense. They're able to function at the line of scrimmage on defense. They're still not perfect on offense, not running it the way they'd want to, and at times they still have their leakage in the offensive line. But they have competent components now to complement the quarterback and Travis Hunter, and a lot of that is because of Robert Livingston and what he's brought.
Give me some 15-second answers here. Indiana, Ohio State, 11 a.m. on Fox. Who wins that one in your opinion?
I'm going to go with Ohio State. overall, and that's not a knock on Indiana. I just think it's Indiana's been running. They've been doing really, really well. This is a different animal.
Can Ole Miss survive a trip to the Swamp? Because if the Rebs lose, they're out.
The Rebs lose, they're out, and the answer to that question is I'm not convinced of it. I think it's going to be a tussle. I think it will go into the fourth quarter. And look for this in that game. Ole Miss better be able to protect because Florida's teeing off right now on people.
Alabama, Oklahoma, on paper, that looks like a tricky game. Will it be tricky for the Tide, you think? That's a tough defense.
It is a tough defense, but I think that team's taken so many punches on the chin, and now that they're out of it, I don't know what their pride level is going to be. And I think Alabama sees the light at the end of the tunnel and realizes they're controlling everything in front of them.
All right, big week 13 coming up. Great recap of a lot of big picture items there from Tom Luginbill of ESPN. You can catch it on replay anytime throughout the day tomorrow on our YouTube channel. Also, Spotify and Apple on the podcast. The Middle Eight with Brandon Marcello and Ryan Brown up next. Lugs, have a great week, man. See you next Monday.
You too, pal.
All right, see you guys. There's only one Champy's world-famous fried chicken. Poor boy's tenders, full fried chicken plates, and a little bit of the Mississippi Delta with chicken on a stick and hot tamales. On your way to or from the big game on Highway 119 in Alabaster, stop by Champy's Chicken.
Follow Next Round Live on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. The social media team at Next Round Live is dedicated to giving you daily news conferences and practice video from UAB, Alabama, Auburn, and around college football. Follow and compare to the sites you used to visit. You'll also get the latest highlights and news from the Next Round Daily Show. Turn on the notifications so you don't miss a thing. Next Round Live on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. See more at nextroundlive.com.
By now, you guys know how I feel about my fashion. However, did you know that I care about your fashion choices? Cargo shorts are out, flip-flops are only appropriate on the boat, and please throw away that stained t-shirt from college. You may be thinking, e.g.,